I'm the writer, and I have been a book discussion group at the Atwater Library since 2008. So we meet 9 times a year, which means there's quite a lot of books. I didn't become a member of borrowing, but I spent a lot of time because I was very involved in the Quebec Writers Federation for a long period of time, and their offices of course are in the Atwater Library. So, but that's been going on since the middle 90s, I guess. In 2003, I started working on doing the book group, and since then, it's often. Oh, it's impossible to answer, really, because I read everything. I mean, I really read everything. Always have. I'm curious about everything. I mean, for a long time, before people began to get worried about password theft, my default password for everything was curious, because I'm curious about everything. So I read all kinds of things. A book from my collection. This is the Little Women that was given to me in the Christmas that I was 7, I guess. Must have been, no, I was 8. And it's a nice edition, which went through a nice kind of book. It went through a number of printings. And it was the first chapter book that I ever read on my own. And it took me 3 months to read it, because I would just read, a few pages at a time. In the end, I read it. By the time I was an adolescent, probably 12 times. And this is a period when there weren't, there's colored illustrations in it. And there's several of them. And that was a big thing. And there's all the type of illustrations. So that's nice. But as you can see, the book has been well used. I mean, really, really well used. The book, for anybody who, I suppose there are people who don't know the story, but it takes during the American Civil War. And the father, and there have 4 girls, and the father is away in the Union Army as a chaplain. And there's a whole abolition this movement underneath this, and there's a great deal of thinking about how you should do things properly and how the world should be better. And anyway, it really made a great impact and impression on me. I don't know whether it appeals as much to kids today or young people today. I know there was a movie made a couple of years ago, which apparently was quite good. I haven't seen it, but there's many things in the story, like in all kinds, the ones that last, the ones that can be read at different times and can be read by different people and bring different things to the reading. Because that's one of the things I often say is that, well, it's nothing me, but that there are 2 people in any reading session, and there's the writer and there's a reader. And the reader's perceptions can be quite different from what the writers are, and it can be almost a dialogue. It's a good question. I look at a lot of publications. I read, for the last couple of years, I read the New Yorker, and I'm plugged into a number of websites, and I have a lot of Facebook friends, writers and critics and things like that, some information. When I'm making the list for my book groups over the past, I have always looked at bestseller lists, and I ask people recommendations too. I always ask people for suggestions. That's where I get the books. One of the things which is really kind of too bad is that the book pages in newspapers are just non-existent these days. So one less source of information about new books. And the different kinds of websites and Goodreads and things like that just don't quite cut it. But yeah, you can find good suggestions if you want. You have to look for them. I've read so much. It's really quite difficult. So many good things that it's hard to choose, to pick one out. And the two possibilities I'm thinking of, because I like them. I thought they were excellent books, but then they required they gave in terms of information and points of view. One is the Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver, which is about, again, there are 5 girls whose father is a missionary in Africa, and it's really good book. But then was Anna Karenina, the Leo Tolstoy one, and I decided I'd say the Anna Karenina. I read that for the first time when I was probably about 19, or at least I thought I had read. And it was taking a book. It's a class on the 19th century novel, because I was my undergraduate degree is in English literature, and so one of the things was the 19th century novel, and I read. That's where it came up, and there was such an amazing love story between Anna and Vronsky, and how she leaves her husband, and it's just heartbreaking, and all this kind of stuff. Okay, so I hadn't read it and put it on the list 5 years ago for the Atwater Library, and I knew it was a good book, but without having thought too much about it, I thought, okay, this is a good one. This is our old book for this year. And I started to read it when we were on vacation in Paris, and you think it's a bit. What's the connection between Paris and Russia in the 1870s? And I thought there might be a kind of a disconnect, but there isn't, because Paris being rebuilt at that time by Baron Haussmann, and actually I was reading a book on how, which includes quite a bit about Haussmann at the time, and so you sort of slide into the kind of two things: the culture of the time, even though, and of course Russia at that time was quite Francophile, and also the power of the railroad and how that changed the world. I mean, that's a really amazing period in terms of changing, going faster than a horse. It's really quite amazing. So anyway, so I was reading, and I sort of remembered that railroad plays a really big, important role in Anna Karenina, and I could see that, it's there. And then, of course, she throws herself in front of the train, and because her life is just, and that I realized that the second reading, that I stopped reading the book when I was 19 or something like that, because I remembered it as I was reading it the second time. I remembered this and I remembered this, and I said, oh yeah. But after that, I didn't remember anything, and I realized there's a whole lot more to the book, and also it was much easier and very interesting to read it, not as a young woman who was swept off her feet by whomever, but as somebody who's mature, and you realize what a situation Anna Karenina is in. This, the society is against this kind of relationship, that she has no power at all, and she just it's very sad. So it's a good book. It makes you think a lot, lots of emotion in it, but also in a window past, and a window on the past of the actual physical way people lived at the time, the importance of the train, and then also a window on the society, even different from a whole lot of other places, but nevertheless there was this kind of situation where women at that time had no power, and I was just really impressed by that. Quite clearly, Little Women, sort of was very formative in terms of political and moral ideas about how you should live. That's one. Anna Karenina, well, I can't say that it affected my life the first time around, other than I thought it was a great love story And obviously I couldn't stand it then that it was going to be tragic. So I quit reading it. The second time I was amazed at, as I said, about how so evocative of a particular period in terms of the 1870s, that whole period. And so that was sort of an intellectual kind of thing. The other things in terms of a right sort of thing, there were some amazing, I mean, the translation I read was a pretty good translation, a recent one. And it was, I think, quite good. And there are all kinds of bits and pieces which you sort of, well, two things. One thing that really struck me is made as of Brahms, how handsome he was, and how, what he was a great horseman and this kind of thing, and how terrific he was, and how he had beautiful teeth, really nice white teeth. And by the end of the book, he has real problems with his teeth because he's eaten too many sweets, really. And so that seems to be an interesting kind of, not symbol exact, a detail which says something about his character. And then at the end, last bit of the book, they're at whatever his name is, Lev's country place, and they're having a big outdoor meal, and there is honey in a honeycomb, and people are eating that sort of as a treat. It's some unusual things, and how good it was. But also there's a bee that drowns in the honey from the honeycomb, and I thought there's a link there. Whether Tolstoy intended it intentionally or whether it just came out, the fact that all this sweetness can ruin your life if you aren't live properly. Now, Tolstoy ended up being really kind of a despicable old man, but certainly he had that is masterful, I think, in terms of those details, in terms of showing character of someone and making an allusion to a kind of worldview that Tolstoy had in terms of how one's life should be led.